This is lesson 2-3, solving equations with distribution. So your procedure is as follows. Step 1 is to distribute the outside coefficient to all the terms on the inside the parentheses. If you don't see an outside coefficient, you should distribute a 1. This is very similar, in fact exactly the same, to using the distributive property from our first unit. Step 2 is to solve the equation exactly with the same rules that we've been using the entire time. That includes drawing a mirror, doing operations to both sides of the equation, and if you haven't memorized your properties, you should be writing them on the right-hand side. Finally, check your work by testing for truth if you feel it's necessary. Let's do some examples. The first example I'll guide you with. We have a 3 outside the parentheses, and we're going to distribute it to both sides, or excuse me, not both sides, but everything in the parentheses. Notice it is not going across the equal sign. The distributive property is not a property of equality. I now have 3x plus 15 is equal to 45 because of the distributive property. And again, please understand, distributive property is not one of equality. Then we're going to solve this like it's a two-step equation. Subtracting 15 from both sides, using the subtraction property of equality, gives me 3x equal to 30. I then divide both sides by 3 to get x equal to 10. And that was the division property of equality. To check, I plug in the 10. I'm going to follow PEMDAS and add 10 and 5 first to get 15. And 3 times 15 is equal to 45. So I have a check. Here's an example for you to try. Pause the video at this point to give yourself a chance to try on your own. So I first want to draw my mirror down, and I want to distribute to everything in parentheses. That gives me negative 8 minus 28, negative 8x minus 28 equals 44. Again, if you haven't memorized your properties, you still should be writing them to the right. At this point, I want to add 28 to both sides. And I have negative 8x is equal to 72. That was using the addition property of equality. Dividing by negative 8 on both sides gives me x equal to negative 9. That was the division property of equality. Again, if you've memorized your properties at this point, you don't need to write them. At this point, you could also perform a check if you so desire. Here's another example for you to try. Pause the video at this point to give yourself a chance to try it on your own. Again, I'll start out by drawing my mirror. I'll distribute 1/4 to both the 8x and the 16. That gives me 2x plus 4 equals 12. I'll then subtract 4 from both sides using the subtraction property of equality to get 2x equal to 8. I'll then divide both sides by 2 using the division property of equality, and x equals 4. You should be checking for truth at this point to make sure that you are correct. And finally, one more example for you to try. Pause the video at this point to give yourself a chance to try it on your own. I want to stick 1 in there to remind myself I need to distribute a negative 1. As I do that, I'll draw my mirror, and I end up with 2x plus 17 equals negative 15. That was using the distributive property. Now I'll subtract 17 from both sides using the subtraction property of equality. That gives me 2x equal to negative 32. Now I'll divide both sides by 2 using the division property of equality to get x equal to negative 16. You have, again, if you have not memorized your properties, you should be writing them so that you do memorize them. And you should be plugging in -16 in for X to test for truth. If you're having any issues with any portion of this lesson, please make sure you are emailing me or consulting me in class.